Welcome to the Climate Conscious Podcast. I'm your host, Villaroel-Lamb, and today I'm joined by Dr. Deborah Villarroel-Lamb. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Deval. Thank you for having me on today.
Dr. Deborah Villarroel-Lamb specializes in the numerical and physical modeling of coastal engineering processes. She has developed specialized numerical models to investigate the physical processes that occur along a coastline. Dr. Villaroel-Lamb is a proud recipient of the prestigious Royal Society Newton Fellowship Award in its inaugural year, 2009. Dr. Villaroel-Lamb's current research focuses on improving the design of nature-based solutions to promote sustainable approaches to coastal protection and advance the climate resilience goals of the Caribbean region. Coastal communities in the Caribbean are facing a range of challenges due to climate change. Rising sea levels lead to increased risk of flooding, erosion, and saltwater intrusion. Also, the loss of land, property, and infrastructure, which includes our roads, buildings, and tourist facilities. Coastal communities which are dependent on fishing and also tourism, face the challenges of declining catches, loss of income, food insecurity, and exacerbating poverty and vulnerability. Now, these are just a few examples of the issues that are being faced by coastal communities as a result of climate change. So, Dr. Villaroel-Lamb, I know that you are committed to improving how we apply engineering solutions in our environment, and specifically our coastlines. So, what are some examples of innovative engineering techniques that are being utilized to protect coastal assets in the Caribbean?
Okay, thanks for that, Deval. I just want to start off a little bit by giving a brief overview of the engineer's role in the whole design process and moving forward with getting solutions implemented on the coastline. So just to give context to your listeners of how we usually are involved in that process. So we do the design part of it. So we actually try to understand the kind of protection being offered by a given solution. But we don't work in isolation. We usually given some sort of a brief by the client or whoever would have been paying the fees for the engineer. And we try to ascertain, all right, this is a possible solution. What are some of the potential impacts on the community, on the environment? And we try to optimize the solution. So more recently now, you find that there's a lot more stakeholder engagement as we try to address societal and more social impacts. So there has been some innovations just taking place in the overall design procedure as engineers get more involved in trying to achieve sustainable, we're being part of that process to achieve sustainable development and meet those sustainable goals throughout the region. So with that said, we've always had some tools in our repertoire to look at alleviating some of the impacts of climate change. And some of those would be what you can see on the shoreline, what we call our hard engineering approaches, which are things that are made of concrete or rocks, so things like our breakwaters, which are offshore, or revetments, which are on the shore. And then we have things called soft engineering approaches. And we've always had those available to us to do our design. The soft engineering approaches are not as visually intrusive, so they try to integrate in nature a little bit more. So some of the innovations that has taken place, let me just first start off with our hard engineering approaches, is that we try to change the way we do the design. including more stakeholders to try to address some of the social impacts, but also in the design technical aspects as well. So, for example, we would include predictions of sea level rise, or try to ascertain the increased storminess associated with climate change. So we might try to indulge in more risk-based approaches, meaning we're looking at where we ascertain the risk associated with a particular solution, as opposed to looking at more static design. So there are innovations taking place in that design process itself. There are also innovations taking place in the types of armoring or units we would use as part of our design. So like, for example, you may have seen before rocks being used, but there are also different types of designs that may be specially made, things that we call like tetrapods and tribars. So there are innovations taking place in the actual geometric configuration of different arming units, so that we ensure that it has a smaller footprint in our coastal region. And there are also innovations taking place in the materials that are being used. I'm not sure exactly to the extent to which they are used across the region, but I know that there are different types of concretes being used. So we have things called e-concrete that are used in like places like Europe. That can be readily applied here in our region. We have things like marinecrete, and these special types of concretes try to reduce the carbon footprint, not only in the manufacturing process, but also they look at encouraging the growth of marine organisms and minimizing the impact taking place due to the traditional concrete in the marine environment. So that's some of the innovations in terms of our hard engineering. And as well now, in terms of soft engineering approaches, listeners might have been familiar with things like putting sediment on a beach, what people call beach nourishment. So that is also an additional option. We can also use more approaches that kind of stem from a management style or part of an integrated coastal zone management plan. And that may include things like coastal zone planning, where engineers may assist in understanding or ascertaining setback distances. We could do dune stabilization strategies. So those are some of the things that we can use and have being trying to implement now across the region. So some of those you would have recognized in soft engineer approaches would be similar to what would have been traditionally called ecosystem-based adaptation strategies. And ecosystem-based adaptation strategies are trying to foster, encourage, or rehabilitate or restore various ecosystems. So they may be part of how engineers will work with promoting or putting forward a solutions. They can be incorporated into some sort of, as I said, broader management plan. All right, so again, those two approaches have always been available, and we have innovations taking place in both the hard engineering and the soft engineering approaches, as well as the hybrid approaches where we've merged the two. So you might find that we want to have a community protected from a particular event. So we would place a hard structure, but to just lessen the visual intrusiveness of the design, you might put a beach nourishment over it so that it looks like a natural beach. But if an event were to occur that would remove that sediment, at least the communities behind will be protected. So those are just some of the areas that you see taking place across the region. I know globally some are a little bit more advanced, and we'll be seeing that some of those things are being used, because we do have a lot of consultants who come from the international arena and would bring that sort of technology and know-how to our region. So we're seeing that happening across the region.
So thanks for giving us that overview of hard versus soft engineering approaches. And I think our listeners will have been seeing some of these techniques and not maybe not understanding where it fits in. But I think, based on your explanation, we can now identify some of the things that we observe even within our own environments. And you mentioned the soft engineering approach involves integrating nature. And that brings us to the topic of nature-based solutions. These solutions leverage the functions and the benefits of ecosystems to address environmental and even socioeconomic issues. So, nature-based solutions versus traditional engineering approaches in coastal management. Is one superior to the other, or are they truly complementary when protecting coastlines and coastal communities?
So let's digress a little bit. So ecosystem-based adaptation strategies in the traditional sense refer to conservation, rehabilitation, restoration of ecosystems. The limitation with those approaches, it can be stated as a type of a nature-based solution, but the limitation with EBA is that as an engineer, I cannot ascertain the level of protection that will be offered by that particular ecosystem. So we know there are the ecosystem services that would be of interest to us as engineers, like flooding mitigation or erosion reduction, that's coastal erosion reduction. But to what extent will it do it? How will it protect my coastline in a particular event? So there were some limitations with those EBA approaches. So nature-based solutions kind of broadens that definition to look at protecting people, protecting assets, protecting property, while still trying to conserve, while still trying to rehabilitate and restore. And nature-based solutions now try to find a way for us to manage the coastline, but in a little bit more of a designed approach. So in a way, we're trying to design nature. We cannot, we know that, but in a way, we're trying to implement designs that understand, okay, well, if we have this particular ecosystem on our shoreline, this is the level of protection we're going to get from this system. If we integrate a hard engineering option into that solution, then we can augment our level of protection. So nature-based solutions in itself does not exclude a hard engineering component. So EBA, which speaks only about ecosystems, will not include a hard engineering approach, but this broader definition of nature-based solutions may in fact include a hard engineering option, either throughout the life of the solution or for part of the time, or maybe in just one particular location. So it broadens that definition a little bit. So with that said, it provides a better opportunity for us as a people, as a region, to achieve what we want in terms of sustainability, to achieve what we want in terms of being resilient to what's happening in terms of our climate changes. One thing we know is the climate is changing. We're not certain about the extent to which it's changing. So predicting what's going to happen makes it very difficult. So for my design, I know, okay, we have sea level rise, but I would choose different scenarios for my sea level rise and then say, okay, how does it affect my solution? I know the waves may become more intense due to increased storminess. They may be more frequent. How does that impact on my design when I'm looking at optimizing a solution? So there's uncertainty in the change in climate. And it's already difficult for us when we're looking at doing our design of our hard structures, because we have to build that uncertainty of future conditions into the design that we're implementing now. And when we do a design for a structure, it's for like 25 years or 50 years. It has to stand on the shoreline. So we have to know a little bit, have a little crystal ball to know what the future will hold, but we don't have a crystal ball. So we have to make some educated guesses. We have to make some assumptions based on historical data. We have to do our modeling and see our trends and patterns so that we can try and manage what's happening. With nature-based solutions, it gets even more complicated because now we have a hard component. We may have a hard component. Then we have this ecosystem which can change with temperature. It can change from today, tomorrow, over the next couple of months. And with a nature-based solution, it means that I have to be able, as an engineer, to determine the level of protection that particular ecosystem can offer to my community over the period of life my solution will be there, meaning over the period of 25 or 50 years. I have to ascertain the level of protection that may be offered by that ecosystem, and given the consideration that it may change due to temperature, pollution, impact of the impact of different types of loading. So like we know sometimes during very intense events, coral reefs may be damaged, so that the level of wave reduction and level of energy reduction in the waves may vary after storm or before storm. So there's a whole host of information that has to go into designing and implementing a nature-based solution. So let me just go through some of the limitations with the traditional form of engineering first. We design to a given level of protection, and that is set. All right. Our solutions, the concrete and blocks, they don't change and merge with time. They don't adapt to a changing climate. It is set, and that is set for the life of my structure. And so I don't have an adaptable structure. I don't have a structure that can change depending on the conditions that it experiences. We design to a given level of protection, and because of cost, we don't always design to the maximum level of protection. That will depend on the client and who is authorizing or finalizing the selection. But we design to a given level of protection. And if that level of loading is exceeded, then you find that the structure will fail. We have structures that can significantly impact the environment. So when I drop or place some large rocks in a coastal area, it can do a lot of damage to the natural environment. It can do a lot of damage to the social environment because you can interfere with people's livelihoods. Fishermen may not have easy access to the sea. You have to put in a slipway. You might interfere with the marine organisms moving up or whatever types of flora or fauna in that particular area. The access to those, it's limited because we put this hard structure. So we don't have a perfect solution, but the problem with that, or I should say the advantage with hard engineering, is we know how to do it better than nature-based solutions because we've had years of experience. There are multiple design guidelines and manuals we can pull from to design and at least explore which solution is best. Now, based on what I had said before with nature-based solutions, we need a lot more information because there's a lot more uncertainty in the design. So therefore, it poses some issues in the sense that we do need a little bit more information. Because of the diverse types of information we do need different technical persons involved. So not just an engineer, we need coral reef ecologists, we need mangrove specialists. So we need people who are going to know about that ecological aspect and can assist in determining how will that particular component change with time, how the features change with time. And then we have to be able to translate those changing features to level of protection, either increasing levels of protection or diminishing levels of protection. So nature-based solutions bring with it a host of complexity. Now we have to work in transdisciplinary teams, which is not always easy to do because we have people with different goals, different views, adverse, different opinions coming into play. And it's a challenge to try to manage that. We also have to engage the community even more. So yes, we used to have stakeholder consultations. We say, okay, these are the designs, people present their views. For nature-based solution, we have to be more forward thinking. So stakeholders have to be involved from design conceptualization throughout the whole design process. And of course, they might form part of the maintenance of the nature-based solution because we now have, let's say, a dune system. We want the community involved to ensure that they don't trample the vegetation, people don't come and bulldoze or remove the dunes, which are providing some sort of protection. So what we now have is, in order for this nature-based solution to work, we need more data, we need more involvement with more people, we need more of an integrated approach with stakeholders, which isn't that easy to do. So I've said all that, and it may seem like, we should just throw our hands up in the air and give up and say, just stick with what we know. But what we know is not going to get us to where we need to be, because we know the climate is changing. That much we know. But if we stick with what is traditional, we will never achieve the needs of our communities. We have basically, I might think of it in two extremes, is either we do nothing because we don't have the resources to harden the shoreline, or we just harden the shoreline, which significantly is going to impact social aspects as well as, people's livelihoods, people's communities. That's not the option that we want. So with all the issues that we're facing now and the obstacles that we have to overcome with nature-based solutions, I don't see it as we have a choice, but to try to overcome those challenges and find a way to get to where we need to go. So right now, the hard solutions have an advantage in that we know how to do it. So if we need to protect the coastline immediately, we can implement some form of hard solution, but that doesn't have to be the end of it. We can now look at how, as we're building that knowledge with our ecological components, how can we then implement something in the long term? So we can now start to remove that hard engineering in 5-10 years' time as the knowledge becomes available and implement a more ecologically friendly approach. That is the whole concept of a nature-based solution. So we're meeting the needs of the people now, we're protecting communities now, and it may involve some sort of hard engineering in the interim, but it doesn't mean that's the end of the story. And that is the uniqueness of a nature-based solution.
Yes. And you made such important points. You said that we designed a given level of protection, and that made me think that if climate change continues to escalate, our current resilience techniques will eventually prove ineffective. So even as we adapt and we use both hard and soft engineering approaches to adapt to the changing climate, we must continue to mitigate the extent to which climate change happens. And another question that comes to mind, based on what you shared, you spoke so well about the trade-offs and the benefits of using a hybrid approach. One might ask, can we truly design our way to resilience?
Thanks, Deval. So let's go back to the first question, the first comment that you had in terms of the uncertainty in the changing climate. And that is true. So it's what can help us a little bit, and what has been our feeling as a region is adequate data collection. So if we have comprehensive data sets that we could pick up patterns, trends in historical data and use those to project. And the longer the data set that we have, the better the estimate or projection will be, because we are able to easily ascertain some of those trending characteristics that will help in terms of designing the solution. That will also help in terms of achieving resilience, because if we continue to collect data and we continue to monitor if we implement a solution, be it hard, soft, hybrid, or nature-based solution, and we continue to monitor, collect the data, store it, interrogate the data. And when I say interrogate the data, look for the trends, pick up those patterns. We can now know or understand, do we need to go and change? Do we need to go and adjust our solution? Do we need to implement something different? Because we are seeing whether the solution is working, whether the solution is not working. And then with the way we traditionally collect data, we would look at more physical parameters, waves. I'm talking about in the coastal environment. We say waves, currents, fine. But now we have to include other types of information that will help us address socioeconomic objectives as well. Possibly we need to now look at, and that is where this holistic approach coming in. So we need to know that our solutions are not adversely affecting communities. It's growing and building communities. It's developing people. So it has to be more focused also on including those social aspects as well. So not just the physical parameters, not just the environment, with the ecosystems, but the social aspects as well. And then we want to ensure that once we're collecting the data, we interrogating it, we analyzing it, we are making the right decisions based on sound information, not based on whether or not, we think it will work or we have a gut feeling that this will work. But we have to be able to collate all the information. That local knowledge is also quite critical in order for us to achieve resilience. So we have local information that sometimes we lose. We don't capture it well enough in our data collection, but local knowledge is critical if we as a region have to move forward with strapped or limited resources. If we're financially strapped, we have limited resources, not in terms of only money, but human manpower as well. We need to use as many of the available resources as we do have. So I don't know. I can give an example of when we were collecting data on the East Coast a couple of years ago. We would normally we would go out into the ocean. So as part of our approach, we would ensure that we monitor the Met Office for any rough seas bulletins or any adverse weather alerts so that we would not go out when we had those conditions. And we didn't see anything come from the Met Office, but one afternoon, but we would use fishermen and fishing vessels to go and deploy our instruments. And one afternoon, my technician came and said to me, Deborah, the fisherman called and said, the sea does not look right. And I remember asking her, I said, what does that mean? She said, no, that's all he said. The sea does not look right. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? We will cancel the trip, which was scheduled for the day afterwards. And the next day started, nothing, no bulletins came out from the Met Office. But around midday, a rough seas bulletin came into effect. And I always remembered in my mind, I kept telling myself, how did he know? What did he see? What information that we need to capture in that local community that could help us, because we don't have the money to continue to collect data at that comprehensive rate consistently, as a region. But if we could capture that local knowledge, translate it information that we can use, then that can help us with building our resilience. So to me, we can achieve it. We have no choice, because it's either we allow our communities to disappear or we change how they look by making it more hard, hardening our shoreline. We cannot afford to lose our coastal communities. We need to be able to see that natural environment that helps with our overall well-being as a people. So we have to find a way to balance it. And nature plays a significant role in our overall well-being. So one of the ways I think we're going to be able to achieve that is through data collection, understanding what the data is telling us. And I'm not just talking about waves and currents. I'm talking about people data as well, how people are responding, how people are feeling. So making sure our solutions are meeting the needs of our communities.
I always say that we need to capture, value, and leverage local and indigenous knowledge. And I feel like as Caribbean people, we are best positioned to solve our problems and to find solutions. We can definitely use international approaches, but we are the ones who are on the ground and we know our environments best. So it's definitely important. Again, you mentioned earlier stakeholder engagement. And not just engineers. I mean, engineers are important, but we definitely need to take a more inclusive approach to developing solutions, especially considering the social aspect of the problem as well as the solutions that are being proposed.
Yes, Deval, that is correct. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I am all for regional people solving our problems regionally. I think we have the know-how, I know we know what we need to do. I know sometimes we are limited by resources, but I think the only way we can really overcome that is we work together. And we have to find a way to work more as a team, not just across, even within our own local setting. It's sometimes difficult to find that cohesiveness. Even when we are doing the exact same thing, there seems to be still some separation. But we have to work as a team much more than we had ever done in the past, and then be able to collaborate not just across the walls of a building, but across the ocean. And I think we need to be able to build that synergy across the region to truly solve our problems, tap into what we do have, what we do know, and use that to our advantage. So I am all for that. Regional people solving our regional problems. And that is how we have to do it if we have any hope to achieve resilience, because we cannot always rely on some international foreign entity to intervene or interject. We are on the ground. We know what we need to do. We just need to find a way to work with the limitations that we have now.
So, Deborah, I know that you are currently involved in research that looks at improving the design of nature-based solutions to promote sustainable approaches to coastal protection. So, can you tell us about your current project and how it's supporting coastal resilience in the Caribbean?
So you would have heard me mention the limitations with implementing nature-based solutions and the lack of data and lack of information in terms of designing certain components. And that's what the project hopes to achieve. So we are leveraging some of the technical skills which an engineer would normally have in terms of numerical modeling, in terms of physical modeling, or using field data collection techniques and analyzing the data to try to generate just a small increase. We don't hope to achieve an extensive improvement in the body of knowledge over this 2-year project, but we do hope to improve the state of the art where we are in terms of designing. So we're leveraging those techniques to augment the design of nature-based solutions in terms of trying to understand the quantification or quantifying the extent of like erosion protection or reduction in wave energy based on the different features of ecosystems. So some of the ecosystems you're looking at would be coral reefs, mangroves, and upper beach vegetation. And looking at particular characteristics of those ecosystems and trying to map how, when those characteristics change, what will be the impact on wave energy reduction or reduction in coastal erosion. So that's what the project hopes to achieve. But in order to ensure that our output is valuable, we're also trying to implement this sort of transdisciplinary approach to the project during its execution. So we engage with various stakeholders, trying to get their views as to what will be some of the obstacles associated with implementing nature-based solutions, what are some opportunities for us. And again, as that broader discussion, we're seeing this as a regional effort. So we've tried to get persons from across the region to be part of that discourse, part of that discussion, so that what we're trying to ensure that, one, we have a usable output. As I said, we don't expect to solve all the ills, but we hope to have some improvement. So we have a usable output, that the output is relevant, that can be assimilated into a practical setting so that we can use that, as well as throughout the project, understand what else we need to do to get where we know we need to go. So having these stakeholders tell us, their experiences, their views. It's just not about regional stakeholders only. We've also invited people from the international arena because we could learn from their experiences as well, see where they had opportunities, where they had some challenges, and we try to adapt to our own regional and local setting. So that's what the project wants to achieve in a nutshell. So we are involved in modeling some of these ecosystems in our flume in the University of the West Indies. We are doing some data collection at two sites we selected, one in Tobago and one on the east coast of Trinidad. And we are also doing different types of modeling activities to help augment the data that we have to feed into that design aspect for our nature-based solution.
As we seek to address the challenge of coastal resilience, it's clear that it requires a comprehensive and coordinated approach, and this includes both the hard and soft or the hybrid coastal management strategies and sustainable development practices, as you mentioned, international collaboration and also harnessing local knowledge and of course data. We need we need to be data driven. We need for our solutions and strategies to be informed by the data as we seek to build resilience and reduce vulnerability in coastal communities. So as we wrap up today's episode, I would love to hear from you, Deborah. In your view, what would make the world a better place?
So it's a difficult question, but I can give you an answer from an overall perspective, where I would love to see we move together as we progress as a community, and I'm thinking of it as a global community. So from local, regional up to this global setting, we have this one goal. We desire to achieve this main goal of making sure that we ensure that the protection of all our individuals in that group, all the persons in the globe, to ensure that we are protected, we have a future, and not just for some. And I think that, to me, comes down to that individual responsibility to ensure that we as individuals not only seek to be part of a larger community, not only just say that in terms of just saying its sake, but understand and know full well what the responsibilities are as individuals. So that is part of the goal as well, that we as individuals understand that we have a critical role to play in driving our progress, not only in our households, in our local communities, in our national communities, not only across the region, but across the globe. And you always hear people say, what can one individual do? We can make a big difference as individuals. And as meeting those challenges at the individual scale, can we truly achieve what we want globally? So I think, just to finish that idealization off a bit, is just so that individuals, when I say responsibility, no, it's not just about words, but we have to put things into action. So I have actually met individuals who are very active in terms of climate change and the issues surrounding climate change, but had no qualms about littering in the street. And I remember having a heated discussion saying the two are not separate. When you're looking at overcoming these global challenges, it comes down to the individual understanding that you have a responsibility, even at that level, to feed into that global progress, so that you cannot talk about issues surrounding climate change and then just discard your waste in a wanton manner in the street. That two cannot merge, two cannot meet. And that is where we see that there's this separation between the global view and the individual responsibility. And in order for us to achieve true resilience, true sustainability as a global or international community, I hope that individuals can understand what their role is, their responsibility is, and then we all move forward with one purpose, one goal. So that is what I hope would make the world a better place, where individuals can just decide, we want this as a world. I know what my responsibility is, and I will do it in every area of my life. meaning that I will not just about littering. I go into work, I do what I'm supposed to do so that systems run more efficiently. I do what I'm supposed to do wherever I am, because that is important. Your job is important. It is invaluable, your contribution. And I want persons to recognize that no matter where they are in their state in life, your contribution is invaluable.
Perfectly said. So how can listeners connect with you?
Okay, so best form to communicate with me is through email. And I do have a LinkedIn account, which you can find readily once you search for my name. And my email address is readily available on the university website. Once you search for the name as well, you would find the email address. And I am typically in front of my computer most of the day. So that's the easiest way you will get in contact with me. So those might be the two best approaches to communicate or reach out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Villaroel-Lamb, for sharing your insights on nature-based solutions and challenges and opportunities associated with building coastal resilience for the Caribbean.
Thank you so much, Deval.
Thanks for tuning in to the Climate Conscious podcast. We hope you found today's episode interesting, informative, and inspiring. Visit theclimateconscious.com for more info. I'm Deborah, and this is the Climate Conscious Podcast.